Good evening, everyone. It's your co-host here, Andrew Full. We do not have Bailey with us tonight, so it's just going to be a me show here talking with Destin once he gets on. We're going to be talking about Great Lakes Smallmouth techniques season by season. So we'll start with the obvious one, spring, do a little like late winter into pre-spawn to spawn, so summer pattern, and then fall into winter transition. So we're going to be talking about that here shortly. But just a couple things first. I want to thank everybody that listens every week to us and that follows along with me and Bailey. You guys are awesome. Uh, a lot of my clients here in my first 2 months of guiding have come from this podcast. So thank you to you guys. And it's humbling and I am very thankful for it. And for that, we're going to talk some juice here on some Lake Erie smallmouth from season to season. So I hope you guys are ready. Couple more notes really quick. I did just get my New York State Guide license. So probably late this summer, I'll start booking trips for inland salmon, steelhead, trophy brown trout, maybe even a little musky fishing once I figure out how to do it, because it's not something I ever really chase or have had the desire. But now that hopefully we have some more free time, we'll be able to catch some big skis. So good evening, everyone. I hope you enjoy this. Destin's getting here in the queue here in a minute, and we'll get them popped up and ready to go. So another side note, make sure you guys get your questions in. We're going to be giving away 2 bags of Outdoorsman Coffee Co. coffee like we do every Monday night live. So this one's going to be great. Do you guys have any questions for me before we get really going here? Let's see here, Scott Klein. Ooh, I'm interested in that one, Scott. Goby colors are huge. They work really anywhere because a lot of lakes have sculpin in them or log perch, and they're very similar colored bait fish. So that is something that definitely will work. Jonathan, what's going on? Hey, man, how are you? So, what do you guys want to know about Lake Erie smallmouth fishing at the moment? We're in that spring pre-spawn, late winter phase. Water's still 45 degrees. Destin seems to be having some technical difficulties, which is, it happens. Well, I'll tell you a little bit on some of my guide trips here, how we've been. Hey, Tyler, that's awesome. Glad you caught them. So the way we've been catching them lately, we're doing a little bit of Ned rigging, swim baiting, in little tiny 110+1 junior megabass jerkbaits that just came out. They're kind of hard to get. I got my hands on. I think I have like 7 or 8 of them now. Dynamite little baits. So I guess I can start off with one of my favorite techniques, especially early winter, right? So, well, early spring, I should say, late winter, early spring, when the ice first gets off the lake, we have water temps in the high 30s, low 40s. And the first thing I always want to do is drag. And I want to find specific bottom contour. Dude, sorry, my ADHD kicked in here. They will be. I'm going to try to shoot out Wednesday and look for them, Greg. And then maybe even Friday evening. And we still have to set up a time for us to meet. So, but we're going to crush them. 110 plus 1 junior. It ranges. I will use the Western Clown is a really good color. GG Perch is another really good color. We got Destin here, so we'll kind of revert back and get going. Hey, dude, how's it going?
Yeah, sorry, we had some technical difficulties out here in the middle of nowhere, Virginia. So I got the weak Wi-Fi signal, so hopefully we can get through this and get some good content in for everybody. Can you hear me?
I think I can hear you now. I took my earphones out, so it sounds a little better. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Sweet. How was your drive?
Hey guys.
From Neely Henry up to James?
It was tiring. We got here last evening, basically just threw my stuff up in the room and went to bed. Just hit the water bright and early and fished all day today, and gonna do it a couple more days. Life on the road. Fishing is definitely wonderful, but it is a job for sure.
Absolutely. Scott is asking where you're staying in Virginia currently.
It's called Providence Forge. I'd never heard of it. Another friend of mine got an Airbnb, so I was just crashing with them. And it is kind of like in between Williamsburg and Richmond, I think.
I'm not too familiar with the Virginia area, but I think Scott is from Virginia, so I think that's why he was asking.
Oh, that makes sense. Yes, yeah. It's a cool place. It's a place I've got to go a lot because the Opens go here like every year, so it's pretty sweet. I mean, I feel kind of like I know a lot of people here. It's like it's different.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
So here, can you see this from Scott? He says to come up to Winchester, VA, and hop in the jet boat and let's go catch some shallow river smallies.
That'd be awesome. So while I was driving through, I saw the Winchester like exit while I was driving from Neely Henry. So yeah, I would love to. I know they've got them on the James River actually, way up the James. They catch some really big smallmouth.
It's probably treacherous to run up there with a bass boat, though.
Going as far as you can go with a bass boat in the James River. You physically can't go further.
Oh man. So to get
there is some
kicked off here,
though.
Sweet. Can you hear me all right? I put my headphones back in.
Yep, I can hear you.
Sweet. So to get started here, we're gonna start with like a little.
Enlighten me. What were we?
Okay, yeah. So we're kind of go through like seasonal techniques. So we're gonna go like late winter, spring, so that pre-spawn to spawn. Kind of hop through what your favorite techniques are, and kind of I'll piggyback off of you and go with what I do. We fish very similarly, I think, for smallmouth. So and then we'll kind of take it all the way to December, November when the ice starts to come and how we slow down. So I guess where we'll start, where I was kind of chatting about before you hopped on, is late winter pre-spawn when the ice just comes off the Great Lakes. So how does it work down towards where you're at in Erie? And then I'll kind of talk about it up here in Buffalo.
Yeah, so Erie is, I mean, for how like similar Erie is all around like the lake, it is pretty different in the fact that like Erie, PA, seasonal things, especially like this time of year, or I mean the early winter or late winter, kind of heading into spring, is significantly different than like those guys in Buffalo, honestly, and the guys in Sandusky and stuff have their own thing too. You know, for us, the late winter generally the lake is pretty muddy around us when that ice comes off, so it's not generally as big of a factor early. It usually takes a little bit before that starts going. I'd say more towards, you know, mid-April, when that usually starts getting good, once the weather starts settling a little bit and the water kind of settles out. For us, Presque Isle Bay really pops off good early on. And I mean, first things, you're catching them deep. I mean, a blade bait is really, really tough to beat right when that ice comes off. It's a vertical presentation. You can keep it right in that strike zone, right in their face. Those lethargic fish really react to that blade bait for some reason. Other things we like to do, I mean, a drop shot's going to come into play. A Ned rig is also very, very good. Once that ice comes off and it starts slowly warming up, that's another really good presentation. Mimicking, they're starting to feed up to, get ready for the spawn. So they're chowing down on everything, whether it's a goby, whether it's, a shad, a alewife, whatever they specifically feed on that part of Erie, which it varies seasonally too. But I mean, all of those things are really good at mimicking that forage that they eat. And honestly, crawdads play a little bit of a factor too.
Oh, absolutely. Now, would you say the water's muddy because of all the tributaries that dump in down there in the springtime? There's excessive runoff.
That's a good point. I would say probably. I mean, obviously, Erie, PA is really well known for steelhead fishing. We got a lot of tributaries along the shoreline and Pennsylvania shoreline. So yeah, that snow melt, the rain, the runoff, it is coming into the lake, and it does get kind of muddied up usually right off the bat. It takes a little while to settle out.
Yeah, and I think that's due to there being a lack of current in that middle basin type deal, right? Up here in Buffalo, we have a ton of current, but the issue that we run into is an ice boom. So you might be on the lake fishing in beginning of April, late March, and I have 500 miles of ice still left on my end of the lake. So it's kind of funny how that works. This year we got really blessed and we were able to get out early and really mash on them. It's been absolutely just insanity up here in Buffalo.
You guys have been absolutely destroying them this year. Honestly, I'm like, oh man, I haven't even really caught smallmouth this year. That looks like so much fun. You guys have been smashing. It looks like every trip you guys are catching 25 to 28 pounds.
Yeah, and 40 to 100 fish. It's just insane.
That's pretty.
My hands just stopped bleeding the other day from 3 weeks ago because they were so torn up from pulling fish off.
Yeah,
the bite was
you
so
guys
good.
have been hard at it, man. It's crazy. Those smallmouth can tear you up pretty good too. When you're catching those big ones, their mouths are so just sandpapery, and it just tears up your hands.
That gives me a random thought. Have you noticed their teeth seem to be getting a little bigger every year?
I have not noticed that. Is that something that you're
I feel
this year specifically?
Yeah, maybe even last year, some of the smaller ones I feel have a way more granulated mouth to them. When you grab them, they just tear you to shreds for whatever reason.
I haven't noticed any change. Maybe it's because you're out on the water 100 times more now that you're guiding all the time. that you're noticing true. That.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I don't know, but I've noticed it too in a lot of largemouth on some of the Lake Ontario bays that we have gobies in from them going down in the rock and eating the goby. Their teeth are getting extra sharp for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, there's a very good chance that it could be as a result of that, just based on what they're adapting to eat primarily, and their teeth are adapting to that. The best feeders are propagating. Those are the ones that are able to keep surviving and thriving.
Survival of the fittest. You got to adapt to your environment to live.
It's a cruel world out in the animal kingdom.
Yes, it is. Even in humanity kingdom. So, but up here in Buffalo, as I was saying, we have a lot more current. So our water tends to clear faster, but we get stuck in logged up by an ice boom that for whatever reason they put in. I get it. It protects homeowner docks and the Niagara River, but it actually does a lot of ecological damage to the floor bed of our lake because it causes these ice jams to bottleneck up, and some of those ice shoves will flip and go down 30 foot, and it will damage like prime spawning habitat for fish, main lake. But then on the counter side, the Niagara River is actually causing more silt year over year because it doesn't tumble quite through the Niagara like it does when the lake flips and goes 6 to 8 foot. So we have more silt in the river, but prime spawning habitat for bass that's getting torn up in the lake in that late spring when we get big winds that come through. It's kind of crazy.
Makes sense.
But
I mean, I assume what are they doing that for? Mostly for just like transportation stuff, like shipping and all that, so they can control that more.
It's actually for the New York Power Authority. So right over Niagara Falls, they have the intakes for the huge power plants, the hydroelectric power plants on the lower Niagara. And that's where the water inflow to them is right at that top of the Niagara Falls. And they can actually control the rate of flow that goes into Lake Ontario through the lower Niagara through those intakes. So they could virtually run the falls down to like 1 to 10% of flow at any given moment and just drop the floor out of Lake Ontario, which is kind of crazy. Wow. But yeah, they just don't want the ice to get stuck in those inflows, because then you could have a whole world of problems with generators going down, and then you have electric issues in New York City and Canada, because that's where most of that power goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that wouldn't be good. I mean, as fishermen, we want the what's best for the fish too. But I mean, in that case, I don't know if there's really like a good compromise in that situation, considering how much that affects the power and stuff. Yeah, I think that's fighting a losing battle with that one. But I mean, you guys had the booms out much earlier this year than usual, it seemed.
Yeah, so
that's good. You guys have been fishing a lot more like earlier.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. I think 2 years ago the boom came out like the first week of May. So, and then the last 2 years, last year it came out the end of February, and it was super cold, if I remember correctly. And this year it came out like the second week of March. So usually like 2 weeks after the boom comes out, we can start jamming on them. And they're all deep fish. It's the same thing. It does. Because our end of the lake is so shallow too. Like our mean depth is, I think, like 33 foot. So it warms up incredibly fast once that ice is gone. And then we're just looking for rock and sand transitions to jam on them. And they're usually piled up like cordwood when you find them. And it's the same thing. Ned baits, blades, tubes, just slow as you can. Even with the blade bait, I found you almost had to let it lay on the bottom longer than when the water hits like 45 to 50 degrees. Because you'll go to lift and it's like, oh, there's one there.
So Jeff, another guy up in Buffalo, our good buddy Jeff Hippert, Lake Erie Trophy Bass Charters. He came down to fish with me at Erie. It was like early April one year. Like the ice came off quick, and I was like, "Dude, come down here because you guys, the boom was still in. You couldn't even fish." So he came down and met me. We rode out on the boat and went to places I was catching them in the fall time, late fall, like obliterating them on a blade bait. We went right back to the same waypoint and caught them at the same place. And that was some of the coldest water I've caught. Like smallmouth around us, like they start biting when the ice is out, but that temperature, once it starts creeping up around 40, is generally when it starts getting better. The water temp that day was maybe 36, 36, 37. It was a little bit muddy, it was a little bit off color. So that's also cold, muddy water is generally not good, but they were there. And I mean, we caught some. It wasn't like an amazing day, but like knowing that those fish kind of late fall, winter pattern, they kind of just stay, they stay in those same areas. They're not far from there when that ice comes off a lot of the time. And knowing, where they're going to set up in, the late winter, early spring is going to really help you once we get down to the fall time. I know I'm kind of jumping ahead, but this is something like that can really help you save a lot of time to get comes to that season too.
Yeah, so it's like that late winter, late fall, early winter type pattern. Those fish are now in their wintering holes. So as you jump into the spring, like late winter, early spring, they'll be in that same general area, usually not too far. So, and they sit on the same structure, I found, of that time of year as well. So
Mm-hmm.
it's funny how they don't really move much, but we think they do. So
It feels some days it feels like they're moving like crazy, and they
agree.
do like certain times of year. I feel like that time when you find them, then like they're there for a while.
Pardon me. Yeah, so it's kind of fun. My favorite is when that water starts hitting like that 42 to 50 mark, which we're in right now, when they're moving a lot more and they're moving into what we like that quote unquote pre-spawn period, when they start getting everywhere and you could literally do nothing wrong. And Greg here says he's ready for that 5-pound smallmouth. He's going out with me on Saturday afternoon somewhere, either the
Oh
river or
yeah, Greg, you're gonna have a good time.
yeah, so yeah, we're gonna beat up on him. So I can't wait. But yeah,
Greg, you can verify whether you think the smallmouth teeth are getting a little bit rougher.
so
You
I'm
can
gonna
test Andy's hypothesis.
yes, I mean I think it's a good theory in my opinion. So, but we got it.
Well, let me stop one for 1 second. So that 42 to 50, like you're talking about, where we are, usually comes a lot quicker. Our part of the lake, I mean, the big lake is a little bit behind like Presque Isle Bay. So Presque Isle Bay warms extremely quickly because it's a very shallow bay. I mean, most of it's like, 12 to 15 feet. There's some places where it's like 20 or so. So that warms extremely quickly. We're on that pre-spawn bite I mean, in the last couple of years, April, like early April, mid-April, that good pre-spawn bite is on. And sometimes as soon as the ice is off, it warms up quick enough where that really comes into that pre-spawn phase. And that's where, jerk baits, swim baits, that fun stuff, the good moving baits, crank baits, that kind of stuff is really going to be a big factor. And it's fun ways to catch them too.
Oh yeah, I mean right now, like the eastern end where I'm at in Buffalo in the Upper Niagara, I want to say the water temp is hovering around like 48 to 52, depending on the day. And literally, it's just been a swim bait, jerk bait bonanza when you can find them anywhere from
that's like
5 to 15
perfect
foot
water
range.
temp.
It's been an absolute riot for 3.5 weeks. I almost prefer to fish shallow when I get to that 45 to 50 degree temp, because they just eat and they're just, you can catch them cast after cast. So
yeah, I mean, if they're up there, they're there to eat. So
yeah,
that you can catch them on the moving baits. You can catch them on aggressive presentations almost always. I mean, there's certain weather, conditions that might change, how you approach it, but almost always they're on that moving bait, aggressive, like power fishing bite.
so what is your favorite way to catch them power fishing, if you had to choose one?
Jerk bait. You? What's yours?
Either swim bait or jerk bait. It's hard because when they start eating that dang swim bait, it's hard to put it down. But that jerk bait bite, there's something about when you twitch it and then all of a sudden your line just pulls the rod out of your hand. It doesn't even like go slack or jump. They rip the rod out of your hand. It's just wild.
Oh yeah,
Especially when it's in like
it's
3
a
mile
very
an hour
fun
current.
bite.
Oh,
Oh yeah, for you guys with the river and having all that current, I mean, those fish are just mean. And I think that fish that live in river systems are just like a different kind of breed. Like they're just balls of muscle from fighting current all the time, and they just are just like mean little guys, and they like to jump and like to run and pool. Like they're a little bit different than the lake fish. A lot of the lake fish, they fight hard, but most of them are so fat and like just bulbous that they can't really like do quite as much as those river fish.
so Scott Klein just asked you what your Ned rig setup is.
My Ned rig setup. So I'm going to throw the Ned rig almost always on like a 7-foot medium to sometimes medium heavy, depending on the manufacturer. I like the cash in. I use the Icon series, so like a 7-foot medium, like a fast action or extra fast, just depending on what works for you. I'll throw it with a spinning reel almost always. 10-pound braid to anywhere from 8, usually 8-pound fluorocarbon, but sometimes 10. I use Gamma Edge, and then I use an owner Ned rig, like the jig head and the hook and stuff. But Andy and I and some of us have some custom ones we get made, with owner hooks, and they just hold our bait a little bit
better.
A little bit better, like we found. So we do that, and then most of the time, I mean, I'll throw like a Z-Man. Like I like the TRD stuff, and I'll throw like a Senko or something on it occasionally, but most of the time it's a Z-Man plastic, just the TRD. Those little hula stick things are cool. I like those. And the little like tube with the tentacle things. I like all those for Ned rig. Anything that's gonna mimic a goby, it's gonna have like an action of a little bait fish, something like that. Something really subtle.
Absolutely. So, I mean, to kind of piggyback there, the only thing I really do differently is I will go with a longer rod. I usually use like a 7.2 or a 7.4-foot rod, but the same action, medium power, fast or extra fast tip with that parabolic flex through the middle of it. But I fish mine normally I would go down to like a 6 or a 7-pound fluoro just because I want to get a snappier, longer cast out if I'm fishing shallow. If I'm dragging, then I'll go up to an 8 or a 10 just because of the abrasion on the deep rock that we fish from time to time. But virtually same baits, TRD, Senkos. General cut down is really good as well. So
yeah, that one is good for sure.
Another one, Venture.
I was trying not to talk about that one as much.
Right. No, it's expensive. Don't go and cut them down. But Venture Lures is the guy out of Ohio. He makes like those little goby dropper baits. I experimented on those on the Ned rig, and they work pretty good as well. So
yeah, those are nice looking little baits with a joint. It just got that nice little quiver to it.
Absolutely. So now let's kind of move into spawn. When would you say the spawn gets going, and what do you do then?
Spawn, generally for us, Presque Isle, it's sometime in May it starts. And it'll go through June. I'd say the water temp, you kind of want the upper 50s. That's generally where it will start. Mid to upper 50s it'll start, and then it'll go, the whole way through June. Mm-hmm. What do I look for? I mean, the fish want to spawn on something that's like firm bottom, especially a smallmouth, especially. Like they want sand. They want, a small, like pea gravelly kind of stuff. That's where they're going to feel comfortable making a bed. That's why you'll see them when they're spawned. They're all bloody and tore up from fanning that gravelly, hard, rocky bottom. A lot of times too in a river system, like Randy's, they could spawn in the current behind a boulder because it's not getting any, it's not getting any of that direct current. They'll just find something hard to get next to, in that situation. Because a lot of those flats even have a lot of current on them in a river system. But, where we live is really just about flats. They're gonna spawn on flats for the most part, whether that's shallow, sometimes deeper, depending on like the water clarity and stuff. They're gonna spawn on flats. They're going to go and fan out of bed, and that'll generally start like what I'm saying, like in May time. They're really not hard to catch when they're on the bed. I mean, Presque Isle gets absolutely obliterated. So like some of those fish can get more challenging to catch. I mean, a lot of times you're not necessarily seeing them, but you can see they're all beat up. But like people will come there and just absolutely destroy and catch the same fish over and over and over. So those ones do get a little bit more finicky. Honestly, they're some of the more finicky smallmouth I've seen anywhere in the country, as far as that goes. Like I've fished spawning tournament at Champlain. I've fished spawning smallmouth other places. They're not hard to catch almost anywhere else as long as you can know where they are. But drop shot is really good. A lot of times places like Presque Isle and stuff, you'll get some like mossy, junky stuff, so it's hard to fish something on the bottom per se. In the main lake, we've got big sand flats too, but also they'll spawn on just big big shale flats as well, up against something or somewhere where they can get out of the current a little bit. Obviously, Andy talked about there's not really like, we don't have a river system, so it's not like that's not pulling current, but we have wind driven current in our part. So they do want to not be like directly in that. So they'll try to get out of it a little bit. Drop shot is probably the best thing by far.
I
usually don't have to
disagree.
do much more than that.
You can catch them on anything.
You can catch the same fish too, like throwing those power fishing things over top of these like bedding areas too.
It's kind of funny. You can throw like a high floating jerkbait and kind of, if you hit the sweet spot of the area on the bed, they'll actually like roll and come over and eat that thing and try to swim it away because they're so mad.
That's exactly what I was thinking, honestly. I was making that point was, like a jerkbait or something through those areas. If they're really territorial, let's go and get.
Yeah, it's fun to watch that.
A fluke, a spy bait. Those are all good search tools. You might not hook them on it always, but it might show you kind of the area where they're at.
So I'm going to drop some juice here real quick on the spawning aspect. I was fishing a tournament a couple of years ago, and it was mid-June. And our fish here spawned through like the middle of July, if you know where to look. But one thing I'll do is power fish like a plopping style bait, just ripping it across the surface if it's slick calm early morning. I can't tell you how many big ones I've gotten to show themselves because I miss it by like 6 feet. And then you can kind of pinpoint it to where you are and just waypoint them. You can go back later and catch them in the tournament. So that's kind of fun. There's nothing like a 6-pound smallie T-boning a plopper.
That sounds like a pretty cool tactic because I've never tried that specifically, like in the same scenario. That sounds like it'd be pretty cool.
So it's funny.
Getting a smallmouth on any kind of tidewater is fun.
So Fishing with Dom says, with the water levels going down in the Great Lakes, are you planning on making any adjustments for the season? So quick little note, I'm actually excited that the water levels are going down. They're down like 3 foot on the eastern end of Erie. Like it's really low compared to where it is normally.
It's crazy because
the last like 3 or 4 years.
Few years have been like absurdly high.
Yeah. So it's back to normal. So I'm actually excited that I'm going to be able to see more of my sight fishing areas this year than I have been able to in the last couple of years. And I think a couple more flats
for you
are
guys
going to come into play this year too, where they haven't spawned the last couple of years. So I actually think the water level coming back down in the next 3 to 4 years, we're going to have actually a really good crop of fish coming up. Not to say that it's already bad or great. I think it's going to get better because there's going to be more sunlight in the water for more fish to spawn. So
that's a good.
And where water was 15 foot 5 years ago, all the fish that we're getting into now are from 4 or 5 years ago, like great spawn classes when the water level was lower. So now that the water level is dropping, we're going to have more fish spawning in a little bit deeper water to where last year might have been 21 foot over their head. Now it'll be 18 and clearer, so that sunlight's going to get down and they'll be way more successful at spawning and doing their thing. So just my idea.
That's a good point. Yeah, for us, I think a lot of the same, positives there. Getting that sunlight on a lot more prime spawning ground is probably going to be a good thing for sure, especially in the lake too, because so much of our part of the lake is just very uniform. and there's only a handful of really good spawning areas, I feel like. So that could definitely help.
My fingers are crossed because from your section of the lake to, let's call it the Cattaraugus Creek area, the last few years has basically been like no void and dead of fish. Like they're there, but not like they were 10, 12 years ago when the Elite Series showed out what Lake Erie could do when guys are running almost to the PA border. So those fish just
and that, who knows, that might be because of, factors like that. They're not getting good spawns, those fish that live in that general, those areas.
Absolutely. So Ian has
also
a really
could be
good
the bait
question.
fish as well too.
Oh, that's another thing. That's a good point.
Because we've had the emerald shiner issue with a much less population of emerald shiners in the lake, but they are coming back. So, I mean, that's only going to have a positive effect on the smallmouth population too.
Absolutely. So with like the pre-spawn, winter, post-spawn, summer, I accidentally missed this question a little bit, but Ian Cash Dollar asks, fish movement. Do you believe fish move based on contour depth change, or will fish move over deep water with little or to say nothing to stay on?
Can you pull that one up again one time? I just want to read it again.
So do you think they just follow like contour lines of depth change, or do they just roam the deep abyss?
Okay, so I think they do both. And I think as anglers, the one that you can target efficiently is the one that uses contours and depth changes. The one that roams the abyss is extremely hard to target. There are those fish that just roam out. They just roam in the abyss. They might not relate to anything.
Hard to get to bite too.
Other than bait. What?
They're so hard to get to bite. Those random abyss giants.
Right. Like those fish that are relating to contour stuff are generally more, I can't say that for sure, but the school related fish. I mean, you're going to have some fish that just roam in the abyss that are schooled up too. Like I've found them that way, but they don't stay and they're not reliable. Like they're literally just, you could go back and just idle around everywhere and never see them because they're 5 miles away now the next day when you go back to check it. There's not reliable fishing, in my opinion. But, I mean, you can get on them once in a while, like those fish that are just on nothing. But as a fisherman, I think focusing on those ones that are more apt to act, have more habitual, stopping places and feeding places are the ones we want to concentrate on.
Absolutely. I personally don't like chasing random ghosts. I mean, no. I don't like no ghosts.
I've done it doesn't. Yeah.
It's my live scope may change the game, but
doing it. I just spent a lot of time doing it, and it's just not consistent.
I bet too, like you would have to find a group of them roaming the abyss in order to give them the bite. If you find like one rogue, that one rogue isn't out there to bite. He's just roaming to get to the next area. Personal opinion.
More than likely. More than likely.
So for the first segment here that we talked about, Scott Shea wants to know, does that same principle apply to the Highland reservoirs?
The roaming the abyss principle, I assume.
No, like I think that question was back when we were talking about like pre-spawn and what the fish translate to. Oh no, wait, hold on, I apologize. I think he was talking about I think asking if like fish move around a lot in Highland reservoirs. I personally don't know anything about Highland reservoir smallmouth fishing. So
so I have a little experience with it, and southern smallmouths in general on these like reservoir systems are still quite different to me. I feel like they act differently than like our natural lake, northern river smallmouths to some extent. From my experience, they're very much, if they're not current oriented, like a place like Pickwick, That's probably where I got to see it a little bit more. But if they're not more current oriented like that, they are going to probably roam. They're gonna tend to roam more and follow schools of bait and make them harder to stay on, especially in the summer. If you see a lot of tournaments down south in the summertime, a lot of these fisheries like Pickwick and stuff, you'll see a smallmouth occasionally, but you don't see many. And I think a lot of that is because, a lot of those smallmouth just kind of get out there deep and roam. And it could be because of the water temperature being so high, they need to constantly be looking for cooler water to, fit their optimal range. Or it could just be, their nature of following bait fish and, being around bait and in a reservoir, that bait could be moving a lot. And with thermoclines and different things, that's another thing to consider at like a highland reservoir. They're going to ride those thermoclines, which largemouth will utilize as well. But that's going to make those smallmouth act quite a bit different, I feel like, than ours per se. I'd say the principles as far as like late winter, spring, like they're going to follow that same progression. But once you get to like summer, early fall, it's going to be significantly different than our place. Once they get in that late summer or late winter, early spring, and then that fall, I think that is kind of similar to the Great Lakes in the fact that they're coming with the bait, but a lot of times they're coming shallow. They're just gorging themselves. They're eating everything. Like I think that is similar, but that summertime period I feel like is where it's differentiated.
I wish I had input, so I'm going to say your answer is the right answer.
Yeah, I could probably be just making stuff up right now, but
well, that's the best part about fishing, right?
Fairly accurate, just from my little experience with highland smallmouths too.
Awesome. So, Jonathan Gauthier here. What pole and reel for your jerkbait, and is it different for smallies and largemouth? So I think that's actually interesting topic too, because a lot of our bays on the Great Lakes actually have a very underappreciated largemouth fishery that can just be absolutely fun when the smallmouth bite dies off, and those funny fickle transition days that you have when you go from that pre-spawn to spawn. Post-spawn isn't really that tough, but that pre-spawn into spawn, when like that 1-2 week period where they just stop eating for whatever reason, I personally like to go largemouth fishing then. So I want to know your input there too, Destin.
That's a good point. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we have some really good largemouth fishing. Like they're not quite as big as the smallmouth, but I mean, there are some big largemouth in the Great Lakes. I mean, you'll see 5 and 6 pound fish turn up. I'd say most of them are 2 and 3 pound range. A lot of 3 pounders, which are fun to catch. Those are good fish. I mean, going out and catching a lot of 3 pound smallmouths is fun too. So like catching 3 pound largemouth when the smallmouth aren't biting as good, I enjoy it too. As far as jerkbait goes, yeah, I will use a different setup. And the reason being is because a smallmouth's mouth is much harder than a largemouth generally. With a largemouth, I tend to use a glass rod more. And the reason being is because it's got that softness and that flex to allow that fish to have a little bit of extra time to get that bait down in its mouth, so I can get more hooks into its mouth, and hopefully have a better chance of landing it. With a smallmouth, I want to use a composite, a fiberglass composite, or even a graphite, as long as it's got that good, soft, a little bit soft tape. Yes, and the reason I want a little bit stiffer though is because to get those hook points stuck in that fish with a harder mouth and harder face, you need to be able to have that a little bit extra power, but also flex to fight them when they're coming up and jumping.
Absolutely. So I just picked up a new jerkbait rod.
6'9" to a 7 foot medium usually, and usually medium moderate. A Cashin, like a jerkbait series. I mean, that's generally what I'm going to throw up.
Absolutely. So I actually just picked up this new it's basically like a limp noodle. It's a 610 Phoenix Maximum. They had them on sale at Tackle Warehouse for like $60. I was like, I want a short jerkbait rod that's moderate action but a fast tip. Thing is super light. By the way, this reel, awesome. Corrado MGL. I can cast this little 110 plus one junior a mile and never touch the spool. So, but what pound test do you throw normally?
Usually 10.
10. Yeah, so I think that's what I have on here.
8. If I want a bait to get deeper, I only throw 8. But most of the time I'm throwing 10 to 12, sometimes heavier if I wanted to go shallower.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, usually my max is like 12 pound with the jerkbait, but I like that 6-10 range and something that's got a quick tip, but it's soft because it's treble hook bait, something that's soft. So when you lean into them, it hooks them really good. And you don't have to worry about pulling the hooks out completely out of their face. But I agree completely. A little bit. I actually like a little bit longer rod for smallmouth too, just for like the shock absorption from when they hit that dang thing. Because a lot of times they hit it like a bottle rocket. So
Yeah,
they're coming from 40 feet away and they're hitting at full speed. Yep. And then it comes flying by. And the last thing you want is owner ST36 hook coming flying at you at 100 miles an hour. Those things stick.
Yes, they do.
So, but yeah, I mean, jerkbait fishing, it's an absolute riot. If nobody's ever fished jerkbaits or smallies, I recommend it. So let's kind of go past.
That was my favorite way to catch them in that like pre-spawn phase.
So what do you think there, Destin? You think that's a good one for the first bag of coffee?
Yeah, that was a good question for sure.
Yeah. So
I think that's a coffee-worthy question.
Yeah. So Jonathan, reach out to me on either Facebook or Instagram and send me your address and information, and we'll get that bag of coffee sent out to you from Outdoorsman Coffee Co. Guys, keep getting your questions in here. We're going to move into the summer patterns now. So what do you look for when you're chasing post-spawn to summer smallmouth on the Great Lakes there, Destin?
So generally I'm going to start reversing. So here's the progression. Fish are generally coming from like out deeper, working their way in. I'm just going to start trying to find them at those stopping places reversed. Okay. So like those first, sometimes they'll hang around the flats a little bit from when they spawn. But in my experience, a lot of those fish are like really beat up, kind of post-spawny fish. And I want to get to those ones that are more far along, starting to feed really heavily. So you're going to start working out to the next break and then the next break and look for, isolated cover out there, rock piles, sand humps. You're going to start getting in the current up there, like where you got the river. They want to start getting back in the current, start feeding. Those are the places I'm going to start looking. For us, Presque Isle is a small bay. There's a small entrance. Those fish are going to come do their thing in Presque Isle. They're going to come and spawn. And they're going to start slowly working their way back out, which they usually do that, by July. Sometime in July, they're kind of worked back out as the water temperatures start rising in the bay. They're going out, following the bait, looking for cooler water out in the lake. So they kind of follow that progression. So you can kind of follow them out there. And the lake fish that kind of act a little bit different and have their own spawning stuff, they're usually a little bit behind because the lake temperatures are always a little bit cooler that time of year as you're heading into it. So, like, they're going to be, still maybe in that spawn cycle, maybe even some pre-spawn fish. They're going to be earlier post-spawn, perhaps. So you're going to kind of follow that progression. But the Presque Isle fish are definitely further ahead, and that's how I'm going to, start looking for them when they get in that post-spawn summertime, pattern.
Yeah, I agree completely. First thing I do when I see spawning fish is the first thing I'll do is back off and figure out where the first flat with prime current, so not super fast 3-mile-an-hour current, which we have everywhere, but let's call it like 1 to 1.5 miles per hour. So something that there might be boulders that they can kind of hide behind, something slacker water for them to feed and regain their strength. And after they move from there, then I'll start looking for that first contour break rock out in the main lake and kind of follow them out from there. And Buffalo's pretty unique in the fact that our fish, I feel like, are very season orientated. So from March through May, they're here. From May to July, they're here. And then they kind of just follow that same progression all the way through. And it virtually, just like you said, it's a big circle, right? They start here, they come in, they spawn, and then they circle back out. And you can almost follow that progression the whole way. If you're to take a map and draw a circle, you would pretty much be able to figure out where the fish are going and coming from at all times. You might not be able to draw a circle, but I can. So Ian has another really good question. So this one comes to fish care because I'm a huge proponent on it, and I think a lot of tournaments are doing better about it, but we've seen huge fish kills in summer tournaments in the past on Great Lakes fisheries. So Ian asked, summer fish care, ice, no ice, additives, call tags, fin clips, water change. What do you think, Destin?
Fin clips will help you keep the fish alive, but it's not going to help keep the fish alive after the fact. I'm a huge proponent of fizzing deep fish. I've been doing it for a long time, and I mean, not always perfect, but especially now, like I learned another method a couple of years ago that honestly has been like 100% effective for me. And there's a lady out of New York. I think she's involved with the New York like Fed and the conservation. Mm-hmm. She's involved with like the bass conservation. She has developed this method, I think, along with Gene Gilliland, who runs bass conservation. And I mean, it's an amazing thing. We'll put like a link or something maybe after the fact to that method, because it's really simple. Like it's laid out pretty good. The counting the scales thing is not how you want to do it, which I'll be the first to tell you that's what I learned first to do, and it was pretty effective, but it wasn't 100% effective. This one is 100% effective because it's a system that adjusts to the size of the fish, and that was the difference between the scale thing and didn't adjust. Yes, Barbelly. Sorry, Barb. I know. It just slipped my mind there for a second. But yes, Barbelly.
I actually looked it up on Facebook. I was like,
what?
I actually went and looked it up on Facebook. I was like, I know her last name is Elliot. I want to say it starts with a B. And I was like, Barb. As soon as I saw it pop up, I was like, that's her.
Oh, she's great. Like, she's a huge proponent of this and fish care, and she honestly does a tremendous job. Like, I'm very impressed by her efforts in that, because, I mean, like you and, all of us that fish, deep water smallmouth tournaments, we've seen when it goes wrong, when there's a lot of dead fish, floating after the tournament, and none of us want to see that. Just something as simple as fizzing them can really, really help that mortality rate stay down. And ice is always a good thing. I would definitely be a proponent of ice. Usually I just hit them with some Rejuvenate. I make sure if that water is warmer, I will hit them with some ice, but if it's not like crazy hot, generally I wouldn't I wouldn't use it, but I'm not saying not to. It's not going to hurt anything. Just make sure it's not that chlorinated kind, because that will possibly have a detrimental effect on the fish. But other than that, pool noodles, that's another thing to use in your live wells. You kind of cut a pool noodle up, the ones on a string. So then you're gonna put it over top. It's gonna help keep some of that coolness down in the water, as well as protect those fish from banging off the lids. Because, you know, when we're fishing these summer tournaments, sometimes it's rough. And when you're running back, you're beating up these fish a lot of times. But those pool noodles will help that kind of cushion that blow. So those are just some things I think that really help cut down on, you know, fish care penalties and you know, be better stewards of our resource with these smallmouth, because it does take quite a while to grow, you know, a 4 or 5 pound smallmouth. So we don't want to be taking those good breeders out of the system.
Absolutely not. A lot of times the biggest ones die so quickly if you don't fish them right away, especially in the summertime and post-spawn fish. But another thing there with the ice, I'm not a proponent of dumping the whole bag in at once. I like to actually freeze a bunch of those little like 8 to 12 ounce Gatorade bottles, and I'll put them right in my cooler. And kind of like that fish noodle type, if you have the fish noodles in there, you can take those Gatorade bottles and you put 2 or 3 of them in there, and that will actually stay cooler longer. So it's more of like a natural cycle of cooling down the water over time, especially if you're recirculating or pumping in fresh water. So that's just what I do. I don't like to dump ice in. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of dumping ice in, because if you put too much in and you're running recirculate, you're going to shock those fish, and you could potentially harm them, in my opinion, even more. So
that is possible. I've seen a lot of guys just stuff it full of ice, and I've seen those fish, you know, being happy and healthy. I don't know what the long-term effects of, you know, shocking them with that kind of temperature change would be, but I mean, the short term is they're fine, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not a huge proponent of it. I don't think it's not something that I do.
Yeah. I mean, if I can get away with it, I don't dump ice into the bin unless it's like dire straits. All my Gatorade bottles have thawed or whatever. But the biggest thing is, if you are going to put a full bag of ice in, I would almost switch from recirculate to pump in, so that you're just constantly pumping in fresh lake water so that oxygen level stays up as well. And with that cooler ice, it's going to create more oxygen in that water. So therefore, it's kind of constantly flushing warmer water in. Yeah, the ice is going to melt quicker, but it's going to help generate a more stable water temp in there, rather than seeing those giant ebb flows, ups and downs of warm, cold to warm, cold. And Chris Birch, I love G-Juice. I have a ton of it. It's good stuff. I've almost had fish dead, and I've put that in there, and they've come back to life. So that's good stuff.
It works. I usually use Rejuvenate, but it's the same thing generally.
Yeah, and they all work. They're all great. So Fishing with Dom has a question. What is the longest dropper line you'll use during the season when drop shotting?
I've used like probably almost a 3-foot leader up in your neck of the woods, Dom, St. Clair. But that's mostly just to keep the bait above that, you know, that sand grass that grows that low grass. But most of the time, you know, in our area, like on Erie, I generally don't go much more than a 2-foot.
Yeah.
And that's rare. I'd say most of the time 12 to 18 inches.
I'm actually going to go less than you. I go like that 8 to 14, because most of the fish I find are right on the bottom.
You usually do like a shorter one.
Yeah.
And I think it works just as good, I mean, in most of the cases.
Absolutely. And if they're not eating a drop shot, you might as well put it on the trailer in the summertime. So
yeah, summertime is totally drop shot season.
Yep. You can get a few on the Ned depending on how much wind you have. But if I'm fishing a tournament in the summer and it's post spawn through fall, I have a drop shot on. It's unbeatable in my opinion. So quick little side note.
I'll have like 3 tied up on the deck. Just because if you break off of weight or something, just throw out the next one.
Yeah. So remember that day that you were in Buffalo for like a half a day? Was that last summer, right in the middle of COVID? We got wings and we're running out to the spot on my boat. And I was like, yeah, they're eating a Ned rig and a tube really well. And I made one cast and I picked up a drop shot. And you're like, you sucker.
Yeah, me and Jeff were like throwing that stuff. And then you like start catching it. I was like, what the heck? You're throwing something else. I was like, oh my, yeah, you're throwing a drop shot.
Sneaky. But literally the day before they were on a Ned rig, and that's all they would eat. But I was just like, when you get that gut feeling, I was like, they're going to eat a drop shot today. And plus I had to get up on you one time. So
yeah,
that was
quick, and we started with them, and then we both, I think Jeff was kind of behind it and was like, what the heck are you guys throwing?
Poor Jeff. That was such a fun day. And then the wings were just incredible to top it off before you had to run up to St. Lawrence. So
yeah, you guys have some freaking awesome food up there.
Heck yeah. So between the pizza and wings and beef on weck, you can't beat Buffalo for food.
Beef on weck? What is that?
It's like roast beef on a Kimmel weck roll. It's like a salty, peppery roll with roast beef. Yeah, it's good.
All right, I gotta get this next time.
For all the times you've been in Buffalo? Oh my gosh.
Never had one.
I'm mildly disappointed.
Well, my usual host, Jeff, is generally a pizza and wings guy.
Burgers. Yeah. Speaking of Jeff, the man is in the house. And he says, I'm all set. Oh, that was so funny. We're like, what?
Dude, you gotta tell him that story.
So, oh man, we were fishing the same day, and Jeff mumbled. I don't even know what he said. It sounded like he mumbled something or said, but me and you both heard him say, I'm all set, because we both were like, are you going to catch something? And he's just like, I'm all set. And we're like, you're all set? You don't want to catch any fish? Like, what? Like, who says that?
Nah, I'm set. I don't need to catch anything. Nah.
So yeah, that was quite. I think we said I'm all set for like the next 4 months. Like that was like the code word.
It's
was
still
funny.
Like it's still hilarious.
I'm all set.
Nah, I'm all set. I don't want to catch anything.
Speaking of flatworms, me and Jeff might have the biggest population of flatworms in all of Western New York.
Yes.
So,
keep stockpiling them.
It's actually getting harder to find them. I think they're back ordered till like September. They have to be. I look every day, and I don't know if any of our viewers have the same issue, but you cannot find them anywhere.
Yeah, well, good thing we all were stocking up for like a year. So
yeah, that's good. And try not to rip through them before derby season because they just work that good all the time. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
Should probably take them out of the boat, honestly.
Protect them. Somebody's gonna like break into your car just to steal your flatworms.
Chris Birch wants to know how many bags of flatworms I have.
Should I confidential information?
Yeah. What I should do is I should take a picture of the box and post it, and maybe I'll do like a giveaway and give away like a bag of Max Sun. Now that would be a funny one. But I don't know because they go on eBay for like $45. And Chris, you are in Central New York, so you don't count. But he says he has hundreds of bags of flatworms, so we know who to call when we start running low.
Coming to you.
So yeah, so let's transition here so we don't keep you too much longer.
For Chris.
Yeah. So let's progress here a little more so I don't keep you all night so you can get prepped for tomorrow and get out practicing again now that we're an hour in. So fall time, summer into fall patterns, like into that early winter. What are you looking for then?
So like summer to fall to me is one of the harder transitions. And that's a lot of times when you're going to have temperature inversions, they say we don't get a thermocline, but I don't think that's accurate. There's basically
there's 100% a thermocline.
So they say there's not though. They say there's really not any area, but there is. Yeah, so like you get some temperature inversions, and the fishing can get tough. It can get very tough. I feel like the reason being is because they're just scattering because that water is getting all mixed and they're just scattering.
Mm-hmm.
Be that also the bait scattering, so that's also scattering them too. So they can be they can be really shallow, they can be really deep, they can be anywhere at that time of year. So it's hard and that is the time of year that I see them move a lot. That is the time I really, really notice that you come out one day, they smash them, the next day they're gone, kind of thing. So the best thing I've found is just trying to. I feel like they do have stopping points still, but like just trying to intersect them on feeding areas. I'll cater more towards sticking with the summer patterns into the fall until we get towards that later fall by when you catch an Alabama rig. Yeah, like Alabama rig is really good this time of year because fish are suspending. They're chasing those schools of bait. A lot of times, those fish you can target those fish. Swim bait, Alabama rig, jerkbait. Those fish. Some of those fish get shallow. Some of them get that intermediate range, depending on the water temp, which generally it's mixed all around, like we were talking about. Those deep fish can get hard to catch. You kind of have windows to catch them, and that's in the summer too. As you head to late summer, early fall, you're gonna have windows when you can catch them. Usually that's like first thing in the morning, and then maybe like an afternoon
like
window somewhere too. So yeah, so just being cognizant of that. Like it's kind of like a tide. Like that you might not catch them all day, but you can kind of pinpoint when your higher percentage times are going to be. So really focusing on that, being at really good places at those times to try to maximize it. That's really what I would do, that time of year. And then as you're heading into the later part of fall, that's when those fish are really, really going to get grouped up. The water temperature is going to start cooling down. Things are going to start getting a lot better. The fishing is going to get a lot better. Those fish are going to start just gorging themselves, feeding on everything, just trying to get ready for that long winter. So, I mean, the same thing kind of applies, Alabama rigs. As you get later in, more your bottom baits, your blade baits come back into play. Your Ned rigs, drop shot obviously is good almost always, but then you can still catch them on swim baits and crank baits and stuff like that. And I mean, early on as you're heading into that later part.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my least favorite month to fish Great Lakes Smallmouth is September because of that temperature inversion. And I can tell you for a fact there is a thermocline because in September our end of the lake will flip because we get like September gales. So we'll get like a 50-mile-an-hour southwest wind, and that'll switch hard out of the east where one of them fronts will come through, and it'll blow like 30, 40, and it'll drop the roof out of the lake. And all of a sudden, one day it'll be 72-degree surface temps, and you'll go out the next morning, like 2 days later, it'll be 58. So there's definitely some temperature inversion, and there's a couple little key areas that we can catch them that they'll actually group up really tight in Buffalo. But because we have way more current, it tends to not affect our fish as much. If anything, it groups them up even tighter in very specific areas.
I totally agree. I think you guys have a little bit better up there during that time of year because you do have a river. And that's another thing I didn't touch upon is when that starts happening, a lot of bait starts migrating to river mouths to, go in there for the fall. They follow, I think it's, like the plankton and stuff. They want to get back into the rivers, and they're just following, the food source is either going into those river systems. And they kind of do that around us, like with Presque Isle. Like you'll have bait migration kind of back into Presque Isle a little bit too. So that is something that you guys have that really helps the fishing a little bit in that regard when you have that late summer to early fall transition.
Absolutely. Now, I think this is both our favorite time of year is the mid to late fall fishing. So kind of walk. So me personally, you only need 3 baits, and it's the same baits, but we're back into the blade, a drop shot, and a Ned rig. And if all of our listeners are out there, you'll probably notice that we never mentioned tubes. Tubes do work, but they have a very specific time and place. Like when all else fails, throw a tube and long line it 200 feet away. But I know for a fact me and Destin catch 99.9% of our fish on those three things I just mentioned.
That's correct. And yeah, tubes do work. I just don't use them a lot anymore. For me, I mean, I will in certain situations, but for me, a Ned rig's almost replaced it.
Yeah, I would agree. The one thing I will say about the tube, and it's a very underappreciated fact, is it still tends to get bigger bites, but you don't get as many. That's just my personal opinion. I don't catch a lot of fish on a tube, but when I do, it's always a good one. But
yeah, that's a good point. The thing I don't like about it is you lose a lot of fish on a tube too. Especially a heavy tube, they have more leverage to throw.
Yeah. They almost had to get it down their throat, and we all know only the small ones get it down their throat to a point you can't get it out. So for whatever reason, I don't know why that works that way, but drives me nuts.
Yeah, that's a conundrum there. I don't really know either, but that's one of the main reasons I don't throw it as much anymore, because I feel like you catch a lot of those same fish with those three presentations that you're talking about.
Yep. Now, what is the coldest water you've caught them in late fall, like early winter? Like, when will you stop fishing for smallies if you're home and you have a boat?
The coldest, like in the mid 30s, maybe mid to high 30s.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And generally, I'll go out as long as I can go out. But generally, we have so many fronts blowing through, we can't get out for so many days that time of year. You have to
like
just
3-4 weeks at a time, and then you get one day, and then it'll blow for 3 to 4 more weeks again. It's
exactly.
Just like,
yeah, well, like 10 footers for a week, and then even after the fact, if you do get a nice, it's really muddy and it's not quite as good. You can still catch them, but a lot of times it's like literally blown out. You can't catch them. Not as good.
Yeah. So, I mean, I hate to circumvent here back to a tournament that we fished together. Remember that one fall derby we fished in the mud? Yes. And we're running out. We're like, oh, this is going to be terrible. It's going to suck. And we caught probably like 70 fish that day doing just random stuff.
Yeah, I was very surprised based on that watercolor that we were catching them. And everybody was catching them. But it just looked like you weren't going to catch them. From my experience, smallmouth don't like muddy water. River smallmouth might be a little bit different. They might like it, but they're going to still feed. But those lake fish generally don't want to feed in muddy water.
Not one bit. So Jonathan here has another really good question. He wants to know, how do you distinguish between being caught on rocks or a big bite? What advice do you have for dragging worms and neds as pertaining to bites and feeling it?
That's a really good question. Yeah, because the thing, especially when you're new and just learning the feel thing, it is very different until you've done it a long time. It's a very, very subtle feel thing. Mm-hmm. When you've got all that line out, if you're fishing deep, fall, the spring, you're fishing really deep, summer, all that line out, it's really hard to detect a bite. Generally, what I do is kind of pick up on something just ever so slightly,
like a check,
to see if it pulls back. Either pulls back, not in the sense of like it's pulling back because it never moved, like it's stuck.
It just feels like that mushy feeling.
Yes, it's mushy. Like it kind of pulls back, like it's mushy, like it's not on the bottom, kind of thing. And then if you feel that mushiness, set the hook. Reel down and set the hook. That's the best way that I found to be able to distinguish those bites. I'm always just using that rod and that line and that weight to be, my hand down there feeling around and really like understanding what's going on down there.
Absolutely. And I'm going to take it one step further, and I'm no master or professional here by any means, but when my biggest tip that I even tell my guide clients is when you're ticking that bottom, don't set the hook, right? What the first thing you want to do if you think it's mush or a bite is reel a little bit. Just kind of reel a little bit because your rod will start to load up. And if it starts to pull back, then almost just like a pivot set to the side and lean into them and reel faster. Because the worst thing that you can do is that if you set it, you're going to jerk it out of the zone and there might have been fish there. But if you pull and there's nothing there, you can kind of reset and go back down. Or if you reel a little quicker, you can just open your bail and you're not ripping it 7 feet. But your hookup percentage will go way up on that sweeping hook set I found when you're dragging a long way away. And it'll actually hook them into the top of the mouth. So you can almost set the hook with a really sharp hook just by reeling a little faster and just turning your body and leaning into them as opposed to like that jerk set.
Yeah, kind of like a Carolina rig sweep.
Yep.
Sweep set. When you
And it, not this past weekend, but the weekend before, I had 2 clients out on the boat and they're missing a lot of fish because they're like, I think that's a bite, and they would set it. And I was like, next time you get a bite, just kind of start checking the rod slightly to the side and reel and see if it gets real heavy. And if it feels like it's a snag, your rod is just going to keep going. But if it's actually a fish, it'll feel like mushy, and then just real faster and lean on them as hard as you can. And once they did that, their land ratio went up like 99%. I think they only lost 1 more fish after that point because they weren't used to the whole feeling the bottom, the different of the bottom and what was a fish, because they all, for a beginner, they can all feel relatively the same. When you go over that rock pile, I felt a thump, so it's got to be a fish. But if you're using braid and fluoro and a very sensitive rod, once you learn and you have hours making the same cast over and over again, you can generally know what's there. And it's all time on the water, really.
It is. One of the hardest things, because I got it a lot in the past, is getting people to get that feel. And I mean, how Andy described it's really good. But that's always been a really hard thing to describe and to get people to learn quickly, because it is something that does need a lot of practice and time and experience with it. But I mean, how we broke it down is probably the best way for you to at least improve right now.
Yeah.
On getting that feel.
And it's hard to say what's going on too, because we don't know what rods you're using, we don't know line, we don't know reels, we don't even know exactly like what baits, heads. So I mean, like I said before, I'm no professional. I just guide and fish tournaments around New York State and whatnot. But so mine and Destin's opinion might be very different on this. But time, money always helps with rod and reel setups, and then just getting comfortable with the bait that you're using, what you're doing, just to figure out what the difference is. Like when you're reeling a crankbait through mud and rock, you can always tell the difference because it'll feel mushy and all of a sudden you'll feel tick, 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 tick. So it's just learning the differences by spending time on the water and keep going. I think you said, Jonathan, that you've been doing it for about 5 months now. So you're very green still in the sport. So as you learn and buy better gear and keep fishing, you're going to really quickly pick up what the differences are. And I think you're on the right path. So before we let Destin run off here, does anybody else have any other questions they want to get in? There's still 1 more bag of coffee. I'll hang out for a few minutes after Destin leaves, and I can answer anything that you guys want. Is there anything you want to hit on, Destin?
I think we really touched upon most of the things that were going through my mind today, just that we might have talked about. I do want to thank everybody because we got some really, really good questions tonight, and it really made both of us think quite a bit, which I like. I mean, I like having to dig deep to think about those things. And a lot of things I don't think about much. It's just things that we do. So being able to like dictate that was kind of cool. So I appreciate all those questions, guys.
Yeah, thank you. If nobody, we'll give it kind of like a few more moments here, and then we'll get the second bag of coffee out, I have a runner-up that I think I'm going to go with. I just want to see if any more questions come in while we still have a few viewers. But real quick, while we're waiting to see if we get any more, what do you have coming up here, just real fast, so everybody knows that's following you, what's going on, and all the traveling you're doing at the moment?
Right. So obviously, we just finished up with Neely Henry. I hightailed it 10 hours to Richmond, Virginia to start the Northern Open season. I'm going to fish the Northerns this year. And then I will hightail it back, and we'll start practice for Gunnersville Monday over in Alabama, not too far from Neely Henry. So after that, I'll come home, got to do work stuff, a little bit of guiding, a little pre-fishing up in New York, and fishing a little charity tournament in June. And then we have a little bit of time. We got the Classic, and then we got some time in between before the New York swing to kind of like catch up with life. So that's kind of what's on the agenda heading into the summertime here.
So what are your plans for the summer during like the low key times when you have that big break coming up? Because that first 3 quarters of the Elite Series schedule was pretty condensed. So what are you going to do with all this free time?
Yeah, good question. I would say catch up on a lot of like work. Definitely spend a lot more time with the family. Just being in the same place for a while will be really nice. Catching up with my friends physically in person, which will be great. And fishing, obviously, definitely doing some fishing. I can't wait to do some smallmouth fishing again. I have not really got to do that much, so I really want to get up and enact what a lot of things we've just been talking about on this podcast.
Right. Yeah, I can't wait. I hope we can sneak in a day in June when you're around, or late May or something if you're coming through, so we can do our little recon secretive trip and just go smash on them. We can take my boat again. That's fine. It's always fun taking. It's always fun taking you and Jeff out on the boat because I have the smallest boat out of all of us, so it's kind of funny.
Like, Andy, you can take us on your boat.
Yeah, I'm like, sure, that's fine.
Like,
it works.
Okay.
It's like, all right, I guess I'll be your chauffeur today. But Orca Retreat, real fast, just wants to know where your favorite places are to fish. Like, let's call it like your top 5 list.
Chickamauga, number 1. Champlain, Erie, Harris Chain, and honestly, Pickwick. Like, I hadn't really fished it, but I love it just because you've got all 3 species.
Yeah,
I'd love to fish there more.
It's quite the assortment of lakes too, because you have north, south, a little bit of like midland, like middle of the country. So you literally have ledge fisheries, river fisheries, lakes, Great Lakes, which I think is kind of cool, and then just shows the versatility that you have. So in the growth of an angler you've had over let's say the last 5-6 years probably as well.
Yeah, it's been quite a steep learning curve. I mean, for me, for sure. But, I mean, I love it. I'm always learning something every time. And just like we're talking about the hook set and the experience and the feel, I mean, that's really what I take every day is like trying to learn something, trying to get a little better. I'm trying to put more time in. And, I mean, that's really my goal every day, just to get 1% better.
Yeah. Be better than the day before should always be the goal of everyone. Even if it's 1.1% better. Yep. Always try to be 1% better the next day than you were the day before. So, but before we keep you here too much longer, Destin, I want to say thank you for coming on tonight. I I know you're very busy
Always
here.
a
So,
pleasure.
yeah, man, I can't wait
Yes.
to get up for you to come to New York. So, as Chris Birch says, no teaming up now, but so we can go fish some derbies together and have some fun.
Oh, we'll definitely be doing that at some point.
Oh, I'm sure.
We
So,
definitely will be.
like I said, we can always take my
Oh,
boat.
yeah, man. Yeah, there you go. But yeah,
They
it's
might not
always a
be too
pleasure.
happy.
And yeah, right. They definitely won't be. But yeah, it's always a pleasure. And I do appreciate everybody's questions. And thanks for coming on, guys. I'm going to sign off and get something to eat and hit the hay.
Dude, enjoy, and I'm sure I'll talk to you here shortly. And good luck this week at the James, and safe travels on the way back to Gunnersville. You're doing like the whole mid-country tour in the
Thanks,
next
sir.
2 weeks. So yeah, you have a good night, man.
Absolutely. Traveling, man. All
Oh,
right,
yeah.
buddy. You have a good night. See you
I'll see ya.
guys. Have a great night.
So, all right, guys. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed that show with Destin talking some Great Lakes techniques. I know we were vastly all over the place, covered a lot of ground. So if you need any feedback at all or a follow-up conversation, do not be afraid to reach out to me on the the Serious Angler page, or even my personal page, which is Full Fishing Guide Service on Instagram. I am fully booked now for the month of May, so we have 3 dates available in June. So if you're interested, make sure you hit up a couple dates in July, a couple dates in August, and then September, October, probably going to switch over to some steelhead and salmon guiding and a few specialty trips because we talked about tonight, September, October, November. Yes, it is an absolute riot to get on Lake Erie and catch giant smallmouth, but the variable is the wind, and it always seems to blow every time I try to get out on the lake. And having a just under 19-foot bass boat, it kind of becomes a little more difficult to do. There's going to be some other specialty stuff like floating skiing for kings. It's something I used to do a lot when I was younger. I'm looking forward to putting some more time into that this year as well. So without further ado, I think the second winner here tonight for the coffee bag is going to be Ian Cashdara on his summer fish care question. That's something that is always extremely important, something that all of us as anglers can do better at. The last thing any of us want to happen when we bring our limit or a couple fish or whatever into the weigh-ins at the end of the day is to have a few dead ones in the well. It always hurts me, and fish care is utmost important. So not only so we can enjoy the resources that we have, but also so that our future generations and children and friends can enjoy them as well. So guys, if you have any other questions, I'll hang out here for another minute or two, and then I'm going to get out of here. If you have any input or opinions at all, make sure you do share this feed with all your buddies, like it, leave comments. And if you Apple Podcast tuner listening in, always make sure you leave us a comment. It helps us grow. It helps us move towards the way that we need to be, just so we can bring you the best experience possible. And next thing, Bailey did not make it tonight. He is actually in the Midwest in Iowa working. So that's why you had me flying solo. If you do have any opinions or thoughts on how I can do better when I'm rocking this solo, please let me know. I am one of the worst public speakers when I have to do it by myself, and that's just a personal deal. So like I said, I hope you guys thoroughly enjoyed it. I do have a jerkbait setup video coming out here soon, and also a Corrado MGL 70 reel review that I'm going to be putting out here soon on the Serious Angler YouTube page. So make sure you guys will check that out as well. As always, like, share, subscribe, and we appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. And Jonathan and Ian, make sure you reach out to us on social media with your name and address so we can get that coffee out to you. And for everybody, make sure you tune in Friday for our part 2 that we have coming out for our setups and baits that we like to use. And for now, everybody, have a good night.